So, Blair and Jane, do you want me to spotlight you, or do you want to see the whole room and talk to the whole room? How do you want me to do this?
I like talking to the whole room, but
I like talking to the whole room too.
So
Yeah.
everybody, keep your cameras on so we can see you and we can talk to you directly. And Candy Carl, welcome. So I'm gonna give this over to Jane Dubin and Blair Russell, who I owe a huge debt of gratitude to for making this program possible and making it possible for TRU to fulfill our mission and help service the community and help everybody understand the business. That's what we're all about, and you guys make it happen. So Blair and Jane, howdy.
Thanks for having us,
Hey,
Bob.
thanks for having us.
We didn't rehearse. We're
Yeah,
producers.
we didn't like rehearse as a show.
Jane,
Why would producers do that? But I think Blair, you should start.
how about I start?
Yeah.
Why don't we each do an introduction? Because I talk so much in class. If anybody who will be a part of it, you'll see. Why don't we each do an introduction, and then I'll talk about foundations, and you can talk about masterclass, and then we can Q&A it or whatever happens. Got to be flexible. Lesson number 1, that one's free. The rest you have to pay for. Hello, everyone. My name is Blair Russell. I am a commercial creative producer, however you want to describe me. Scott, I wrote down your quote, which was, I don't want to produce at all, I just have to. And I'm like, that's also me. I don't really want to produce at all, I just have to. Driven to it, it's a calling. I've been a co-producer of Slave Play on Broadway. I am one of the lead producers of Lizard Boy, which just closed a run off-Broadway in June. I am producing a concert of the new musical for tonight on the West End, September 5th at the Adelphi Theater. I am the producer of the concept albums of the new musical Epic. I've been an investor on many other projects. And I sit on the board of the New Harmony Project, the New York Theater Barn, and Goodspeed Musicals. This will be my 3rd time teaching the Foundations class, and I have some people who I've met through Foundations, some alum here, also some folks who I've met through speed dates here. Really excited to see everyone. I hope the fact that those people have come back is a good sign. So, in a little bit, I will kind of talk you through Foundations, talk about what we cover, go over, some of the more important details just to kind of see if you think it's for you. And if you don't think it's for you, it's because you don't want to face reality. But that's a conversation we can have at another moment. I'm going to pass it to Jane.
I received your pass. I'm Jane Dubin. I am both a commercial producer and a nonprofit president of a board of a nonprofit called Houses on the Moon. I have been a co-producer on 9 Broadway shows. Most recently was last 21 Dana H. and Is This a Room? But I've done the Prom, An American in Paris, Peter and the Starcatcher, a bunch of others, Bandstand. And Houses on the Moon is a nonprofit that works to amplify the unheard voice and works off-Broadway, off-Broadway. I'm also currently developing a musical through audio only. So we're doing it as a podcast called The Village of Vale. I'm a big supporter of Blair's and particularly Lizard Boy, which I thought was great. I have been teaching the master class for a bunch of time. I don't remember how many. I did not teach it in the spring because I was busy, but I'm excited to come back teaching it in the fall. I'm excited that a bunch of the masterclass students are doing stuff. Nico Juber just did Millennials Killing Musicals off-Broadway. Jonathan Ho, Stranger Sings, which is playing all over the world after its off-Broadway run, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, I think that's who I am. Been a long time TRU member, and I think Arcade Green. I think we met. Didn't we meet in the mentorship program like a million years ago? But anyway,
it's possible.
Well, I am happy to start and give a little introduction to foundations for anyone who is interested in that. Again, Blair Russell, producer and foundations instructor. Foundations, the name is really apt. What we hope to provide is foundational education in producing for anybody who is interested in being a producer, interested in having more knowledge, interested in understanding producing from the writer side, interested in figuring out how to have relationships to producers, what producers are looking for, how they operate, how they think. I will say that the knowledge that you gain in foundations and the tools that you have are really key elements as you go into masterclass with Jane that you will actually put into practice. And she talked about you had to have a project for masterclass. And what you learn in foundations, while those things do come up again, it's on a very specific level for your project. And she'll talk more about that. Somebody has their mic on and I can hear your mouse clicking and it's like, it's okay, but it's a little distracting. So the topics that we will cover across, I think, like 10 lessons, we'll start with an introduction and kind of overview of the program. That will be our first class where we talk about clarifying goals. I think goals are extremely important. We talk about SMART goals. We talk about why that matters more than anything else I can teach you, because it really does lay the foundation for everything that we learn. These kind of in order of how much I like them. Our next favorite topic is strategy, developing a strategy and developmental steps. Shows don't just happen. You don't just like fall forward. It actually takes a lot of planning, a long timeline. And I talk about the different ways that shows get from an idea on a page to whatever their ultimate, goal is, whether that is, a festival production or running the show at a regional theater or having it licensed. We talk about how things get there. One thing I'll leave you with after that lesson is a sort of database of opportunities, some that I am involved in and that I know, some that I don't, but you'll be able to look at that as you're thinking about how you develop your show, how you can keep moving forward. We talk about general managers. General manager is such a key member of your team. I dedicate a whole lesson to it, and it's something I think people know the least about. I don't really understand why it's important, but they're my favorite. Talk about budgets and understanding what things cost. Also very important. Talk about putting together a creative team and production team and really understanding who does what. We will talk about marketing, advertising, and publicity in a lesson. Really, that's one of the places where this idea of what's new is really exciting. We will do, I'll skip and come back to our projects, but we'll do an introduction to legal so you understand the sort of legal relationship between producers and writers and investors and those folks. And then the big thing, and I think one of the most exciting elements of it, is what we have as like our final project. So the project, it's a group project. I know, boo, group project, but also theater is a group project, so get over it. I will invite three producers that I know and love. Jane has often been a guest for this. 3 or 4 producers to come in, and what they will do is they will talk to you about a project that they have in development or a project that they are interested in developing. They will sort of pitch it to you, talk to you about it, give you a little bit of background information on it. And then what you will do as a group, you will put together a project pitch. You will create your pitch deck and you will come in and you will have 15 minutes to pitch your project as if you are the producer of the project. You will pitch those projects back to the professional producers, at which point they will be able to give you we'll have feedback from a group, and then you'll have a short private session with them where they'll give you feedback on their pitch. They'll talk about the project, and yes, they might steal some of the things that you said, and that's what you get when you sign up. They get to steal some of the things that you said and use it in their own development. People often ask about this project, why is it important? And this is not so that you can learn how to spend 15 minutes pitching your project to the producer. That's not what it's about. What you will learn by doing this is you will understand what is so important to producers, how producers think, how producers talk about projects, what they need to hear in order for them to talk about a project to somebody else. One thing I always say, people are like, what is a producer? What does a producer do? I say a producer is a writer with no talent, but actually a producer, all they do is take all of the stress and concern and worry and sleepless nights off of your shoulders and put it on their own. They're not magicians. I don't have a magic key to Broadway. All I do is say I'm passionate enough about this to join you in this ridiculous journey. So give me worry about the budgets and the contracts and all of these things, and I will put it on my shoulders, and you can focus on what you do as a writer. So that's kind of foundations. I think it's good to add that you don't need to be you don't need to be interested in ever producing your own project. While it's really good to be able to do that for a number of reasons, which we'll discuss in class, you don't have to want to do that. You will learn so much about how producers operate and how they think. And honestly, just being more knowledgeable, more knowledge is more knowledge. I don't know. I was taught that that's a good thing. And I'll tell you why I love when writers understand producers. There are so many factors that go into why a producer selects a project. Obviously, one of them is, do they like the material? Great. But there's like a million other things we had to consider. Liking the material is not the only thing. We want to make sure we have a good relationship to that person. One way to have a good relationship to a writer is for them to understand my job. If I'm going to be in conflict with them because they don't understand what I do, that's a red flag. I don't want to be in that relationship. Just the other week, there's a project that I've been interested in optioning, and I have 3 writers who have no professional experience and they don't have agents. And what I had to do is I had to sit down with them for 2 hours and go over an option agreement, because the stuff that's in there, if they had no experience and had never learned about it, they would be bowled over and so confused and so overwhelmed. Now, that's the thing that I do, because I've learned the hard way that when you show writers who don't know anything an option agreement, it makes their head spin and they think you're the worst person on earth. But writers who have done this before, who have agents who are advising them, who understand the foundations of producing and why we do what we do, they can read it, they can look at it, they can understand it for themselves, and they don't have to rely on other people to do it for them. And also, it came up the idea of understanding what's changed and what's new about producing. I like to think of myself as still young, and maybe in the theater I am. I'm in my 30s. But every single class, we discuss the foundations and what I learned as a young producer and as somebody who's been doing this for just over a decade, and the things that I do that I think are part of the future. That is key to every single lesson. So you'll never walk away with the textbook way of doing something. You will have the traditional way and what we've been taught historically. You'll have the Blair Russell way, which may not be a way anybody else would do, and you'll have a look towards the future. I also bring in guests, professional guests, general managers, other producers, artists, marketing managers. I bring in other people who can talk about what's going on currently in the business, and they will also have a different perspective. And often that lesson will be a conversation between me and that person, where I've presented a whole presentation and said, this is how you do marketing. And then they come in and say, none of that's true, because everything changed in the last 6 months. And that's good. That conflict is so useful to what we do. So you'll be able to have these guests, and you'll have a lot of different perspectives. And I think it's just really, really important for people as a writer, if you want to have a long career, to have these foundations as a part of your toolkit. I think that's enough for foundations. Should I ask questions about foundations now, or should Jane go and then we can do all questions?
I think Jane should go.
Let me go. Yeah, and then we can do them together. So I teach the master class, and what Blair said about foundations, actually, except for the group project, actually applies a lot to the master class as well. A lot of the subjects that we talk about are the same. A couple of people have asked some logistical questions. Look in the chat. The answer is all to those questions is all on the website at the link that's been on the chat. In terms of the subject matter, the syllabus, the dates, they're all on there. Masterclass starts October 16th and runs for 9 weeks, and has a lot of the same kinds of subject matter, like starting
Jane, not for 9 weeks, 9 sessions.
9 sessions. I'm sorry,
okay.
9 sessions. Masterclass meets basically every 2 weeks, except we don't meet on December 25th. We meet the week earlier, but otherwise it's that same that same schedule, unless everybody wants to meet on December 25th. I think most of us are probably busy. What we go through is more personalized because it starts with the concept that you have a project that you are working on towards some sort of production. And that some sort of production could be audio, it could be a reading, it could be a production, it could be a festival, it could be anything. You have a specific project that you are leading. That could be as the writer, the composer, the director, however you're related, but you are leading that project. Also helpful to have people who I think of as commercial producers, meaning they focus on producing other people's work. And we go through your objectives, we go through development and budgets and raising money and pitching and branding and sources of revenue other than the production itself. The big difference, one of the differences between the class may be the size. We are limited to 10. And we are limited to 10 primarily because there's a lot of presentation work that students do in the class. So there are 3 different presentations. One is, I call it like our hot topic, which is 5 minutes of you discussing something not in the syllabus. I think this year I'm actually going to have that hot topic be something about how we fix theater, given that the demise of regional theaters and the failure of audiences to return has been so prominent that I might ask students to focus on their thoughts about that. But there may also be other topics that people can discuss. The second has proven to be one of the highlights for students, which is you do a 10-minute presentation as part of a team, but you're presenting the other person's project and they will present yours. So if Blair and I were partners on this project, I would present, let's just pick Lizard Boy, he would present the Village of Vale. The idea being that if you get outside your own head about your own project and let someone else get a new perspective, you may learn something. And then you get the perspective of, hey, I'm not tied to this project. I'm a producer. I'm going to look at what that project is. I'm going to draw from that what I think is most important and be able to present that to other people. Actually, there have been some of these partnerships that have turned into actual partnerships, and where people have worked together to produce one of the projects, and that's been pretty fun. But you get to know, number one, you get to work with somebody on a one-to-one basis, and you get to learn more about your project that maybe you haven't seen before, and get to figure out how to analyze what's important about projects as a producer. The third presentation is the end of year when you're presenting your own project, and we generally invite guests in to hear those pitches and give you feedback as well. There are several opportunities during the course of the classes to present. We have a pitching class, and there I generally try to do a little bit of a speed dating kind of thing. So you learn how to talk about your project in short stretches as opposed to longer stretches. And like in foundations, we will have guests that come in periodically to talk about different subject matters, and also flexible in that if people have specific topics they want to discuss, that's typically what I do in the beginning of class. The hot topic, open conversation before we get onto the agenda for the class. And I think that's probably where I'll stop and wait for questions. October 16th is my first class. And yeah,
My Bob, this is actually wrong on the website, which is funny because you're the one who made me change it. But my first class is September 26th, and it'll run through 1/16. Classes are Tuesdays, 6:30 to 8:30, not every Tuesday. It's not quite regular because of holidays and things like that, but the schedule is there. It has all of the dates once Bob changes it to start on 9/26. We normally, in that 2-hour session, start with half hour of networking, an hour lesson, and then 30 minutes of Q&A or more if, we're being very talkative. I also offer for everyone at least one 15-minute sort of private session, which you can just ask me about or find on my Calendly. And also I wanted to say for each lesson, I make it my mission to try to span every level of possible production when we're talking about it. So it's not just massive budgets, it's budgets for every single possible level of production you can do, and what legal agreements you need and what kind of general manager you need, from the smallest fringe production to a Broadway show. So you have a sort of comprehensive education, and it appeals to everyone depending on where they are.
Blair, you just reminded me too. The other feature of Masterclass is a one-on-one, hour-long one-on-one session with me
So
to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
we'll keep everybody in here for now. Just know, everybody, that I'm going to at some point create 3 breakout rooms, one for Blair, one for Jane, and one for any kind of private side conversations that anybody needs to have. But for now, I think we'd like to have you ask any other questions that you might want to ask that will clarify or not clarify this. Maybe just help you know which direction to go, whether it's the Foundations or Masterclass, or about both classes. So do we have any questions from the room?
I just want to say, there's a question that just showed up. What is the most frustrating aspect of being a successful producer?
We were successful, we wouldn't be frustrated.
Exactly.
We felt
that was exactly what I was
we wouldn't
say.
be frustrated. Let me put it that way.
I would say, to answer that question, it would be the time it takes to get things done and the cost of things, which seems to be ever increasing.
And also
that's the short answer.
And also the truth of the matter is that most shows take as long as eight years to get from I'm going to produce this to finally getting it up in your commercial production. That's frustrating. The timelines are very frustrating, I'm sure, for everybody.
Yep.
And it's just the way it is. But that's also what Jane was suggesting before in terms of our conversations going forward. We want to talk about what people's ideas are at fixing this broken business, because we have a broken business right now.
And Bob, yes, it's very important. The classes are on Zoom.
Yes, we're staying on Zoom because it's been.
Because most of you are not in New York, so.
Neither am I.
Would make it,
so.
Yes, and neither is Blair. Neither am I, for that matter. I'm outside the city, but yeah, we're going to continue on Zoom for those people who are in New York, where I am. I'm on the outside of New York. There will be potentially occasions to meet up, but the class itself is on Zoom.
And these are offered normally twice a year, Bob. I mean, as far as I know, and historically they've been offered twice a year.
We do a spring semester and a fall semester, basically, is how it works. We usually start classes in September or October, depending on the schedule of the people that are teaching them. And then we do another session in February or March, again, depending on the schedules of the people that are teaching them.
Looks like Susan has a...
Yeah.
Yeah, having heard the foregoing, I'm now wondering, is it possible to do the foundations class and audit the master class at the same time? Because if we're also putting a show together for January, actually having to do presentations would probably be a bit much for us at this moment. Presentations to the class. But
right.
Auditing a class would be really helpful. And then I could do the class in the spring.
I'll take that one, Bob.
Class.
Yeah, I think, Susan, it just depends on the number of people that are applying. I usually take one sometimes 2 auditors. So we'll just have to, see how it plays out.
Mario, to answer your new
Okay.
question, I think there are a couple. One is that producers are not artistic. That's not true. 2 is that we all have money, just like money to throw around, or we're just like making money. And that's not true. Producers are the last people to ever make money on a show. We get to pay to go to work. And I would say the third is that getting a producer, I kind of mentioned this earlier, hinted at it earlier, that getting a producer is an end goal and means that your show is going to happen, because it doesn't.
Yeah, I would say I would agree with those things. I think the other misconception is that if you have a producer, then you no longer have to do anything. And,
Yes.
and you can choose that approach, but you won't have your producer for very long. The best relationships, producer writer relationships, are partnerships where each contributes to the success. And the best partnerships are when both parties understand the process, which is why I continue to teach the class, because I think that the best successes occur when the authors understand the process, they can contribute to the process, and understand that the producer is also trying to make the best out of the situation and do what's best for the project. So the more everybody knows, the better.
Yeah, there are writers who definitely, I'll just say that my writers who are thinking like a producer are very good at convincing me to do things that I didn't want to spend money on, when they can say, this is what you should do and this is why I think you should do it. And I go, you're right, that's a great idea. And now I have no reason to not do it. Patrick, to your question, with a summary and synopsis for a new musical being reviewed presently before seeking a librettist, lyricist, and composer. It's not too early for foundations. The foundations knowledge is evergreen, whether you use it now or in 10 years. Jane, masterclass, I think.
I would say it's probably a little early for masterclass. And if you're new to the process, you probably would be served extremely well in foundations and learning all of the things that you need to learn about building your team, and then take masterclass when you're a little closer to things. But if you think differently, don't let that stop you from applying to masterclass, and let us figure out, where it fits in. Not everybody, I will say that not everybody that has taken masterclass is ready to go on stage tomorrow. And not everybody who's taken masterclass has actually had a finished script, but they've at least, you need to have something to talk about. You need to have something that a partner could talk about and present and pitch to the class, and you need to have something that you can present to other producers. And if you're going to have that opportunity once, you probably want to make that presentation when you have something tangible to talk about.
I just want to answer a question that it was answered by saying go to the website, but the way to apply is go to the website and get the application for foundations. And if you are interested in masterclass, as I said earlier, just send me an email, trunltd@aol.com. I think Owen or Jay will put my email in there. Just email me and say you're interested in masterclass. And like Jane said earlier, if you think that you might want to do masterclass, sure, apply the full application, which is the masterclass application includes the foundations application. It's just an extra page or two. and then we will review it, and we can kind of decide whether you would benefit from the masterclass or benefit from foundations. It's very hard. It's actually very hard. It's as hard for us to decide as it is often for you, because there are things to be gotten out of either of the classes.
And that's what I'll say, Bob. I mean, whether you have produced before, whether you have done a show, whether you're even in the process, I do think there are things to be gained from foundations unless you are an actively working producer, you know, in the New York industry. If that's not where you are right now, then you will learn things from foundations. You will make connections. You will have discussions that will inspire you. There is no reason just because you're working on a project and you don't get into masterclass to say, oh, well, then foundations isn't for me. There's so much more to it than we talk about budget. We talk about why the budget and if you should do that budget and whether or not this makes sense and how things are changing and what you need to learn later. And people say, oh, and I tried this, or you learn more from the people around you in almost all these situations than you ever do from just, you know, a presentation. I learn from Jane every day, so it never ends.
Yeah, I would say that like that's I want to make sure people understand that how important that what Blair just said is, that the information. I mean, Blair and I are both working in the industry. We both know people. Sometimes we even trade guests. We cover a lot of the same material. It really depends where you are in your journey. We spend a little bit more time framing your piece and messaging about your piece. If you have a specific piece to deal with, but you can have a project that you're dealing with and still benefit from foundations. It just depends on, you know, where you are at the moment. And I know if people have taken Blair's class, that when they come into master class, they're really grounded in information. So I always like it when people have taken foundations first, but a lot of people haven't, or they've taken. I heard somebody mention they took CTI, even though it was ages ago. You know, and being in the industry, part of what masterclass benefits from is when the other students share their experiences. And that's why we talk a lot about projects, because you put out stuff that's going on with your show, and other people say, oh, that happened to me, or this happened to me, or you know, we explore issues that you're facing, but we also deal with basic fundamental knowledge. So, you know, again, whether you're taking foundations or masterclass, you're still getting a lot of information, meeting a lot of people.
And also, if you do have a project, my only real rule about questions in foundations is that somebody else can also benefit from the question. And for example, maybe in masterclass, you might get more into the specifics of like what it would mean to cast somebody in your show, considering you're going to this level of production. Like, should I cast this name or celebrity or Broadway person? You know, and maybe you ask a specific name. If you come to foundation and say, is Patti LuPone going to be good casting for the character of Clara in my musical? I'm going to go, like, that's not, let's do that in a 15-minute discussion. But if you say, what is the value of adding a celebrity to my cast, or when should I do that? That's a discussion we can have that's useful for everybody. So there will still be space for you to talk about your own project. It's just, I just hope that the knowledge that you gain, you know, it should be for everybody in the class as well, because there is typically more of us.
Yeah, and sorry, yeah, Teresa's question, is the process working for projects that are university or conservatory theater programs? The format or the location of your project is not all that. I don't want to say it's not that important. It's not the focus. We're trying to help you learn what the producing process is. So whether you're producing readings or you're producing massive musicals or small productions, whether you're trying to go to Broadway or you really want to produce in a small town in Pennsylvania or at a school. It really, that's not, there are obviously nuances that sometimes they're not so nuanced, but there are differences between those types of opportunities. But yes, the short answer to your question is yes.
When I have a fun, and by fun I mean difficult meeting, but ultimately valuable meeting with people, I like to end it by, okay, y'all, let's go do the school play, because that's all it is. It's the same exact thing, just with more money. Yeah, and one of the things we talk about in foundations when we talk about strategizing and planning is exactly that, university and conservatory theater programs, because like Jane says, it's producing is kind of producing. I'll give you some examples of places you can go and how those are important, but the knowledge that you gain will be valuable no matter what steps you take or what your goals are.
And from my own experience, I actually was, before the program was split into foundations and masterclass, it was one class, and we had mentorships. And when I was in this program, I had taken on a partner, and we were doing a particular play. We had produced it in a festival, and we were assigned to Kristen Caskey, who is one of the smartest and most amazing people in the industry. And between the time that we set up the meeting and actually had the meeting, it was like 6 weeks before we stepped away from the project. So we had sent her all this material. We walked in the room and said, sorry, we're not doing the project anymore. And what she said to us is what I repeat back now. I don't really care what your project is. In fact, in masterclass, it's not unusual for people to come in with one project and wind up presenting a different project at the end, because that's the nature of producing. You go in and out of projects, you have multiple things going on at the same time. What I care about is how you approach the decisions to do a project or not do a project, how you approach the decision-making process when it comes to budgeting or casting or building your team. So where you're producing, what you're producing is not the primary. The fact that you have a project for masterclass is important, but what it is and what your plans are for it is less important, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember that. That was beautiful.
And also, by the way, in terms of, I did want to say one other thing about experience, is that there are types of experiences that maybe aren't directly producing theater that count. If, for example, in the very first year I taught the class, there was a writer, who was a self-producing artist, but he was a general contractor in his day job, which you cannot get more like a producer than trying to, deal with building a house, for example. So, or a wedding planner, or any of those things where you are producing. So if you have experience in other industries, somebody mentioned their television, record producers and things like that. Don't let the fact that you haven't produced hold you back from applying to masterclass, and let us, trust us that we'll have the sense of which is the best place for you.
One thing I'll say, I'm sure there's somebody in the room is like, will any of these people teach me how to get to Broadway? And I will teach you how to get to Broadway right now for free, so you don't even have to take the class. You go talk to a Broadway theater owner and you're into Broadway theater. That's pretty much it. So if that's your question, you can leave now, because I told you everything you need to know. But what we're really trying to emphasize here is that this knowledge is about more than just, I have a goal in mind right now, I need to get that goal, tell me how to get the goal. that won't actually serve you at all because that's never how this works. And you'll learn so much more if you are open to seeing what happens, to having the, oh, my project fell apart, now I've got nothing, to changing midway through the course, to saying maybe I'm not doing that anymore, that thing I thought I was doing in January, because I just learned why this is going to be a really expensive, issue, or why I don't want to be a self-producer. I want to find a producer, and I want to focus on that element of my work. So we hope you'll do that.
I want to
Yeah,
piggyback on what you said about Broadway, Blair. One thing that this will help you enormously with is setting realistic goals, attainable goals. So by learning how producers think, you'll start realizing whether your project really is destined for Broadway. Not everything is, and not everything should be on Broadway. There are many other markets, and I think that your minds will be opened up to other possibilities for your work. So yeah, Blair. Oh, everyone, the people, fewer and fewer people come up and say, I have a show that's ready for Broadway these days. I think people are a little bit more realistic now.
That's so good. Maybe it's working. I mean, look, I can get you to Broadway. I'll fire you, hire Lin-Manuel Miranda, and then we'll be good to go. Well, cast Patti LuPone, and it's done.
You
gotta get the money element in there somewhere, though.
Yeah.
Once I hire Lin-Manuel Miranda, I'm gonna get a bunch of money. So, and he has money; he can pay for it. Maybe I should just do this instead.
Right. I think to summarize that what Blair was just saying is basically we're trying to. It's like that expression, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. That's kind of what I think that's the approach here. We're trying to teach you the process. We're not going to produce your show for you. We're going to teach you how to produce, or at least parts of it. We're going to try to teach you how to produce, so that whatever it is and however you want to do it, you'll have the basic knowledge to draw on, whether it's through Blair's class or my class. Yeah.
So do you want to continue having a question and answer session in here? And actually we can go beyond just the program and talk about producing in general if people are interested. I've got a couple smart people here who can have conversations with you about that, or I can make breakout rooms and you can go into smaller groups. If you're intimidated about asking a question in a big room, maybe you'll be a little bit more comfortable in a smaller room. Anybody want to?
Can you just look at? I wrote you a message. I didn't want to say it out loud, but I asked you a question. Did you see that? Jane
is intimidated by asking questions in the group.
I don't want to say the wrong thing.
No, I don't see it.
Okay, I'll write it again.
I'm happy for either route. If there are people who want to, if like 3 people raise their hand and are like, I want to talk to you.
Yes. Yeah, I see your question. A couple things I wanted to say about the program in general. If you are in masterclass, we do allow you to audit foundations, assuming that Blair is okay with it. Some classes he doesn't want people to audit, but most is fine. So yes, if you're First of all, realize that masterclass has a higher price tag than the foundations class. So for that, one of the things that we give is a little plus is you can attend as an auditor foundations class. The other thing, Jane was talking earlier about mentorships. Mentorships are still perfectly possible. Nobody asks me for mentorships anymore because everybody feels like Blair and Jane and whoever's instructing the class are their mentors, which is great. But if there is a specific question that you have about your project and you would benefit from meeting with somebody who has a specific knowledge, you can ask me. It doesn't involve Blair and Jane. You can come to me and say, I need to know about this. Is there somebody that I could either have a consultation with or a mentorship with? I'm still willing to put mentorships together. They're 3 months. They're basically 3-month mentorships. You have to ask me. I can't read your mind. And you have to have a real reason for it. I mean, if there's something that really would benefit you, we'll do whatever we can so that you can get the knowledge that you need.
Yeah, and there's another two things, Bob, just to address the difference in price. I think is sort of obvious in the sense of like foundations versus like a seminar, but also if you count in the value, the value of a private consult with me, it's you're getting your money's worth on my for my hourly rate. But the other question is that Charlie just asked was how much time out of class might be involved, and Blair answered for foundations it's primarily on the group project. In masterclass it's more, because you have to do these different, not only your final project, but you have to work with a partner on your partner presentation, and then you have to do a 5-minute talk about an issue. So I would say that for masterclass, again, thinking of it like a seminar, the more you put in, the more you will get out of it. If you don't want to do any work, then that's probably not the place for you. Or if you want to be part of it, but you can't commit to the time it takes to do the presentations, then you should make that note. And there are a couple of slots for auditors who get to participate in class, but don't have to prepare presentations. And that was I think it was Susan. I don't know if she's still here, but that was her question.
Here.
Oh, there you are. You were at the top of my screen and now you're at the bottom.
She got knocked out and she had to come back in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that would be the difference.
Charlie, I answered very definitively for somebody who's never taken the class, and there are many people here who have taken the class and can probably answer more accurate. Suzanne, Rob, Michelle, John, did you guys spend like hours preparing for foundations every week, or
well, Blair,
to show up?
Blair, I want to just say that the way that you've structured foundations, they get put on teams late. They get put on teams towards the end. Once upon a time, they were on the teams pretty close to the beginning. So we always encouraged them to meet as a team. So basically the time that you were spending outside of class was basically getting to know your team and trying to bond and learn about how to work together. By the way, collaboration is becoming a huge key issue right now in theater. I think the need for collaboration and I'm trying to put together community gatherings that are actually going to address the topic of collaboration from many different angles. We just talked about it last week with the not-for-profit theater companies that are looking at the struggles that are happening around the country. And one of the things we talked about was co-producing and working together. So we're going to talk a lot about that. So I think Rob has an answer to the question. Rob.
Yeah. So I was in Blair's foundation, and we were put in teams that did work together. There was some off hours work, and actually Michelle Reese and I were on the same team. We had to put together a deck for a project that is going to be put up at the Goodspeed Opera this September by Cody Lassen, producer. And I would say that I think we probably had 2 or 3, Michelle might remember clearly, meetings in between classes, 4 maybe.
Their project was also very good. So, the more you put in, the more you get out.
The more you put in, yeah. But it was wonderful, and it's a real life experience. You have to balance time, everyone's schedules. I mean, we did it all over Zoom because I'm in Duluth, Minnesota, not in New York City. So, but yeah, it was as much you can put into it, the more you get out of it.
Michelle?
And I will say that I'm sorry, Michelle. Just one thought before that. If you took masterclass this past spring with Martin and Dave, what you will need to do outside of class for me will be different because you have these presentations. And if you took masterclass in the spring, that doesn't preclude you from from applying to masterclass again, because again, it's a different class and people can take it more than once. So I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
Fine.
Yikes.
Okay, we met like several times, probably 4 or 5 times, and spent like seriously an hour each time. So we did quite a bit of work, but that was only for our final project. And like no other homework was really required. Blair is really thorough and gives great handouts and documents. So if you are wanting to like read through everything and thoroughly research, that is definitely like kudos, please go for it. And he's very approachable, and you can ask him questions. Of course, I emailed him and he always gets back to you. That's very good.
Thanks, Michelle. John Ewing?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that one thing that they aren't telling you that I think you'll find value in is the relationship building. Because it's not just that they bring you real GMs, real social media people that are working on shows, Broadway attorneys, but the people are really incredible that are taking the classes. And coming from the world of film, I find that Broadway people trying to work their way into the business are incredibly knowledgeable. And it's all about relationships and resources, in my opinion. So the people that you'll have the access to, you'll have their email addresses, you'll be able to learn from them and ask them questions. You had the opportunity to build on that for a lifetime. And I think the class is worth 10, 20 times the price, because they literally teach you the information and hand you all of these relationships. So I just wanted to add.
My board would agree with you, but
Me too.
I'm the one that keeps the pricing down, because it's part of my mission as the founder of TRU. I want these things to be as accessible as possible to everyone.
And just to add to John's point, it's not just the people who come in to talk to the class that, I mean, they're doing it because they want to, and they for the most part are accessible to the people in the class to reach out to them if you want to do that. But I've always found in these kinds of situation, it's your classmates that that are the foundation for the continuation of your life in the industry. So being part of the group, even though you're on Zoom, we do breakouts, you have partner, there's a lot of interaction, and you form relationships with people who have like-minded interests. And so you're able to continue. And like I said before, there are people who have wound up working together, producing each other's projects, or working together to produce a different project, or just being able to bounce ideas. In fact, right now, 2 of my students are in London on separate projects, but I got a text with a picture of them together. Hi from London,
My last
kind of
class is planning like a New York City happy hour.
Are we invited?
You have to add, look, I didn't plan it. You have to ask
Okay.
Melissa. I'm putting some, just, we keep talking about people, but I'm going to put in the chat, the names of the people, I've invited to, and it's probably not going to be those people again. I can only blackmail them so many times. But if you want to get a sense of who they are and what you may learn from them and the type of people that we're talking to, you can look them up.
I have a question to me. I don't charge anything for the additional mentorships outside of the program. Maybe someday I will, but at the moment, nobody's been asking me for like 5 years now. Nobody's asked. I've had a couple people ask me for consultations, and I put a couple of people together in consultations. But I know a lot of people in the business. Guys, this is one of the things that may surprise you when you come into this world, the TRU world. The incredible generosity of the theater community. People with credits like endless credits, endless Broadway credits, impressive credits, all these people that are so impressive, and you think, oh my God, I can't speak to these people. They're all accessible. They're all here. They don't come to TRU if they don't want to meet you. They come to TRU because they love meeting people, and they're inspired by you, and they love meeting you and finding out what other people are doing. Looking for people that are starting out, and people love to help each other in this business. It's a crazy business.
Bob, there was a question from a little bit further back that I missed from Mario, that's talking about that he's been a record producer for a while, asking if there's a difference between producing music and producing theater. And I don't produce music, so I can't directly answer it. I'm involved in producing a podcast that is both music and story. I would just say that producing music is one aspect of producing theater.
There were lots of parallels. I've done both.
I do produce music now because it's talking about what's new. Like we somehow come back around to doing concept albums because it's so easy to produce and distribute music. I think producing music is very different, but also like we're not talking about artist development, we're not talking about distribution, we're not talking about any of those things, and there's the equivalent of all of those things in theater that you just won't know. At the face of it, yes, the organization and the budgeting and the marketing and all of that is the same, but what makes producing theater so special is all of the unique things. And by unique, I mean, why do we do it this way? Why haven't we changed it yet? Okay, so we're just going to keep doing this. Great.
Yeah, I think the other, I mean, I'm just, my experience in producing an audio version of a musical versus producing a physical version of a musical is the actors were involved for a week. And now it's all about the post-production of everything and making everything sound really good. Whereas in theater, the actors are involved forever. You know, you develop, and then you produce it live every night, and it's different every night. When you produce music, when you produce anything that's recorded, whether it's film, television, music, whatever, once it's produced, you play with it, you edit it, you make it look perfect, and then that's the experience that everybody has. They experience the same product. Theater is different every night, and it continues to morph and evolve every time you do it.
You have control over your variables in producing music and film, because basically you're producing a tangible product, like exactly what Jane said. Basically, theater wouldn't be theater if it were absolutely identical, the same performance that you see every day. Theater, one of the key characters in any show is the audience. It's not that like that in the music business. It's not like that in the film business. But I produced albums, and I have to tell you, I love producing albums. There's so much more control possible.
So much easier. Well, it's funny that Mario, I don't know if you've seen the play now, Netflix movie, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Like, imagine that situation, but that could happen every day for months. Like, will this person show up? Will they be a problem? Will they do what they're supposed to do? With music, it's like if you get them in and out, you just like get them to put it in. Nowadays, you just manipulate their voice and it works.
Thank God for auto tune.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I mean, I can open up breakout rooms if you want to actually meet each other in smaller groups. Susan, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I have the breakout rooms already. All I have to do is press a button. Susan.
I just have a question about working with directors. I don't know if you want to have a whole separate Friday night. You know, as someone who's been, you know, who acted for a long time and is now coming back in as a playwright. I don't know a lot of directors, and in my 2 festival experiences, I had to spend a lot of time looking for them. And in the first one, she got another job within 2 weeks, so I directed. And I know I could direct, but I could apparently. So I'm just wondering about, you know, at this stage, is it a good idea to direct your own, if our guests have an opinion, good idea to direct your own shows? Or I could spend a lot of time looking between now and January for a director, or I can direct our show at Don't Tell Mama myself.
I have kind of strong feelings about
Jane,
this.
go. We both do, clearly.
If you are a writer and you're directing your own piece, you're missing one of, like, producer, writer, director. There's 3 legs of a stool, and if you remove one of those legs, you're missing a key piece of input to the show. You certainly can direct it, but you don't have that outside eye that can be objective about the piece and talk to the writer. Like, unless you have the ability to completely separate yourself, and your director head talks to the writer head, and the writer pushes back, and you're having these internal monologues. But the director can provide so much creative input into the process. And also, in my experience, it's a different, like, directors have 3-dimensional vision.
Yeah.
That isn't always there in a writer or producer. The other thing is, from an outsider's perspective, and this isn't always the case, but when they see that a director is directing their own piece, it often, I don't know how to say this in an easy way, but it often makes it a perception that it's more of a vanity piece than serious work, especially I would say that
it goes back to the importance of collaboration. Basically, theater is a collaborative medium. I have directed my own plays. I usually do it very early on in very, very minimal productions. I've done it. I much prefer having a director's vision. Like, I've self-produced. I produce my own stuff too. I'd much rather have somebody else produce it.
Yeah, I think self-producing, like, if you're self-producing, directing, and writing, like, that's really
that's terrifying.
It's terrifying. But also, you have to understand that the functions are different. That if you're trying to produce and write and direct, you're not giving, like, full weight to any of those parts. And I think that more people would, if you're self-producing, look, everybody self-produces at some point, like getting a producer.
Yeah, there's no shame in it.
On.
There's no shame in
that.
Yeah,
that's almost expected. Particularly, a lot of people produce their own readings. They produce themselves in a festival because it's hard to get someone to produce you. Directing your own work, I think you're missing, forgetting the perception of it, I think you are missing out on the creative collaboration that a director can bring to the table. I think it's worth the effort, particularly since, if you're not going up until January and it's the beginning of August, I think it's worth the time and effort to, ask people that if they have directors that they've worked with that they've liked, and start that way before you go to some random list and things. But that would be my advice.
Susan, one of the things I do all the time. Excuse me. One of the things I do all the time, Susan, is I send pieces to my director. I have a list of 600 directors, so I can send your stuff out to my director list and see who's interested. And I know 600. I don't know all of them, obviously, but you can tell me who responds, and I can tell you what I know about them if I know them.
I'm holding up 4 fingers because I had 4 thoughts come in. Jane really nailed that about why you should work with a director, and I did want to add an element about a producer in that triangle. But I wanted to say, one, the way you prevent the issue you had before is actually sign some kind of agreement with your director, so that if they do, so that they don't pull out, because if somebody gets a reputation for doing that, that's horrible. 2, producing is behind the scenes. You can get away with self-producing without people really knowing you're self-producing. So it looks a little less, people won't go, oh, this person is producing and writing. And, when you're directing and writing, both of those things are very upfront and public. So people have a perception of it. my other thought was, yes, you won't have the time to do both. So, you know, it's better when you can get things off of your shoulders. But what I wanted to say about the producers and having these three elements is everybody on a stage, everybody who's making something creative is advocating for their own vision. A writer advocates for what they've written, and a director advocates for exactly what Jane said, that 3D vision. And actually the only person in a room who advocates for an audience is normally a producer. Nobody else in there is actually worried about the audience experience, but that's all producers worry about, because we need people to buy tickets. So we need to know what their experience is going to be. So when people say producers are not artistic, or, you know, their notes don't really feel like it's aligned with me, it's like, that's actually our job. Our job is to sit in the room and say, this is going to make people come and see it. This is going to make people not see it. This is going to get you a good review, which means more shows, which means more
Okay,
audience.
thank you.
And this we think will not. So it really is it's helpful as you can to have those three different people and have those elements and bounce those ideas off of each other. And that's hard to do when you're doing both. But like we said, people do that early on.
By the way, there's no big secret about the cost of the programs. I guess we never said it, but the cost of the masterclass is $425, and foundations is $295.
And isn't there some reduction of masterclass if you've already taken?
Yeah, if you're for any repeat of master, there's no reduction if you're coming from foundations to masterclass, but if you're repeating masterclass, or if you're repeating foundations, it's reduced. It's a reduced rate. I can't promise any scholarships this term, only because our scholarship fund has run dry, and I'm trying to get more donations to fill it. So I don't think I can do much in the way of scholarships this particular term.
And could you tell me what, I wasn't really clear on the foundations is beginning September 26th, this latest one, and how long does it run? How long is it running?
The classes will start on September 26th. There will be 10 classes total. But they will not be consecutive weeks because of holidays and my schedule. But the last class will be on January 16th.
Okay, so it spans September to January. Thank you.
Yes.
And masterclass goes from October 16th, and the final class is February 5th. And it is Monday nights, basically every other week, except December 25th class is on December 18th.
Great, thank you.
And Blair, just so you know, I did revise the dates, but what happens sometimes is I forget that I have another version of it open somewhere, and it just reverts to the old version.
Got it.
So I have to do that. I'm gonna have to find your schedule again and put it in again.
I can send it to you. I can
Please.
resurface the email.
Yeah, please do. I didn't know that it had reverted.
I'm happy to go now into a breakout if anybody has specific questions for me or about foundations for the next, couple minutes or until top of the hour or whatever we need to do.
Okay, so I opened the breakout room, so you have to actually accept the invitation to a breakout room. Jane,
before you go,
go,
Bob, Susan, do you have a new question?
No, I never put her hand down.
Okay.
I just want to know what the cost of auditing, like if we do foundations and audit the other.
That's on the website. I just, off the top of my head, I remember that the cost of the masterclass and the cost of foundations class. And I think it's auditor. I don't remember.
It's less. Just check the link on the website. It's on there. I don't know how much. Maybe $100 less, or
I can look.
something like that.
Here it is. I got it up.
Yeah, just also understand that the auditor doesn't do the presentations, and also is not eligible for the outside class time with me. It's just the full students that get that.
Right. Okay.
Audit 325. It's 325 for an auditor.